It is our pleasure to introduce a passionate climate activist with a background in content creation and marketing, Max Hellier. Max is an avid advocate for all habits that can cumulatively contribute towards making the world a more sustainable place. And he can certainly be considered to be one of the frontline heroes who is contributing towards a world a more sustainable place. He has achieved multiple meaningful achievements in his role as a climate activist, and very soon we are going to hear, learning from his experiences and perspectives on how to be a successful environmental activist. As such, without further ado, please let us welcome Max Hellier to the podium.
Hello, everybody. I'm Max. I'm a passive climate activist. So what that is, I'll go into. But essentially, I'd like to talk to you today about not just why we should all be activists, but how. I want to tell you that it'll be all right. And I want to tell you not to worry. Because the powers that be have it all under control. But I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to get rough. It's going to get scary. But that doesn't mean that we're fighting a losing battle. Far from it. We're like a superhero that's been beaten and battered again and again during a big fight scene at the very end of a film. It's looking hopeless. It looks like there's no way in hell that we can come back from inevitable loss. But from somewhere, deep within us, comes this inner strength, this hidden strength that we never knew we had, the strength that we reserved for our last hurrah. That inner strength that finally lands a counterpunch, and then another one, and then another, until our hero finally wins the fight. We've all got that last hurrah hidden within us, ready to unleash at the very last minute. Well, this is our very last minute. Now is the time to dig deep, draw out that hidden strength that we never knew we had, because it might just be a lot easier than you think. Considering you're here today probably means that you know what you're fighting for, but maybe you're looking for tools to land a counterpunch. This could be in the form of impactful statements and facts that leave your opponent floored, ones that you could logically regurgitate on demand. But today, I'm not going to arm you with profound scientific evidence. There are plenty of better resources and much more eloquent speakers than I can give you for that information. Instead, I want to inspire you. I want you to take action. And I want to inspire you to give others the same type of action. I want you to leave here with a fire burning in your belly, with ideas sparking and illuminating every inch of your body, and the raw determination to fight using every single tool at your disposal. The villain of our story is similar to the dangerous villains that you'd usually see in action films. Someone or something is causing our world, our hero, some type of distress or harm or injustice. Some people are oblivious to this looming danger, of this threat, and others are complicit, whilst many are just willfully unaware. In our case, the threat is an uninhabitable world, brought to its knees by destructive industries and powers, with an ever-tightening grip around our well-being. We could visualize these villainous industries as machines of destruction, like a steel powerhouse with condo-sized exhausts devouring everything in its path and spewing its contents of destruction. These machines are probably controlled by cruel and immoral men wearing suits fueling with rolls of paper money. Vivid enough? Probably, but it's not entirely accurate. In fact, I don't want you to have that image or anything similar to that image in mind at all when we're thinking of the villain of our story. Because our story doesn't have a single villain, nor is it a destructive steel machine. It's much more complex and a whole lot scarier. The villain of our story is the simple belief that we, as individuals, can't make a difference. That our personal choices, our everyday simple actions, won't have the greatest of consequences. But I'm here to tell you that they do. Every day you could be fighting back. Every choice you make, you are choosing whether or not to support a future that you want to see, and a future that you'd be proud to leave for the ones you love. Right now, our choices are leading us towards a much, much warmer and more worrisome future. A future that we've all seen alarming signs for in recent years. One that's been the leading topic of conversation for world leaders and big businesses alike for decades. But all this talk is leading to very little action. And it still isn't setting us on the path towards a less bleak-looking future. Unfortunately, it looks like we're now well on the way to exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming within the next 2 decades. This is the target that our world leaders promised that we wouldn't reach. Instead, based on our current emissions, the world is likely to hit between 2.7 degrees and even 3.1 degrees of warming by 2100. It's hard to imagine what kind of world we would be leaving behind for future generations if we arrive at or even surpass these temperatures. As for Bangkok, according to a 2020 study by Climate Central, this entire building and the surrounding areas could be entirely underwater by 2050. That's 150 million people who will be affected by climate displacement in Thailand alone if these temperatures are reached. Thailand is considered highly vulnerable when it comes to climate change. Even in the last 4 years, Thailand has seen some of the hottest years on record. And it's currently facing its worst drought in 4 decades. But in the last year, Bangkok has also seen some of the wettest years on record, with water levels hitting unprecedented heights and floods displacing thousands of people nationwide. Because of these ever-increasing natural disasters, the climate emergency has forced world leaders and big businesses alike to bring climate-related solutions to the forefront of their discussions in every global event. But despite their good intentions, many distant net zero targets that are drafted at climate summits become over-optimistic, and many result in empty promises. Even promises that are made at climate summits like COP27 are often revoked due to a change in the country's political party who may have different interests. The distribution of government funding, whether that be for research projects or subsidies, also doesn't quite align with our current state of emergency. But let's not forget, it's our fight too. If our world leaders aren't pulling their punches, and they aren't putting weight into their punches, then we have to step up. You are not insignificant. Your choices are your superpower. In our story's final minute, it's time for us to take huge counterpunches at industries, at corporations, and at brands that we no longer want to support. And we can simply do this by deciding not to contribute to their supply and demand. Every time that you spend money, you're endorsing that brand. Every time you spend money, you're funding that business. You're supporting that industry. Every time you make conscious purchases that align with your ethos, which is what you personally believe in, you're empowering ethical brands to build. And in turn, you're helping them to grow. This is one of the strongest counterpunches at your disposal. And technology has made it very easy for us to delve deep into corporations, big and small. You're now able to take a look at their supply chain, their humanitarian, and even their environmental footprint. And then you can decide whether or not you want to fund them. This will encourage the act of separating the control that businesses have over consumers, and then returning that control to our heroes, all of us. It doesn't matter who you are or which country you're from. We can all reclaim this control. Every last one of us has this superpower. The people who are most affected by climate change are often the most vulnerable. Indigenous people, people of color, migrant groups, children, the elderly, low-income groups who are often exposed to extreme weather conditions. And it's our responsibility to do everything that we can because they simply don't have a choice but to endure the consequences. Now, I want you to take a minute just to picture what an activist might look like. Just take a moment to visualize your perception of an activist. Every one of you. You probably have that image in mind already. What does an activist look like to you?
To me, traditionally, it's like, someone looking angry and they're like holding a sign. Maybe they've got a cool bandana and some like war paint on or something.
War paint.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your activist doing? What are they doing?
I guess they're like very loud, but in a good way. They're making themselves being heard, and they might have the same outfit that I described.
With the war paint on as well.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. Where are they? Where is your activist?
At a conference or sort of a big event, followed by a crowd of people.
Ooh. Nice. How's your activist acting?
Probably a little bit like angry, wanting to have change, crying out for change.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm sure of you probably all imagined a very similar thing, or most of you. An image of an activist who is usually portrayed as using sort of extreme methods of an act of civil disobedience. So that could be people chaining themselves to government buildings or throwing tomato soup or mashed potato on priceless pieces of art, or blocking streets with billboards and barricades, or even a digital hacker leaking secret government information. Is this similar to the image that most of you had? Yeah, I thought so. Well, that is activism. That is activism. And some methods are undeniably drastic. And they use controversy to encourage media outlets to share their thought process and their story. That is activism. This can be a super effective way to put the spotlight on their intentions. And as questionable as some of those tactics might be, they do provoke a conversation. But this isn't for everybody. There are many other ways to make an impact without potentially discouraging people from taking notice of your actions. An activist to me is someone who makes an uncompromising decision not to support an industry that isn't aligned with their beliefs. An activist doesn't need to be combative to make an impact. Remember your superpowers? It's your choices, your actions, who or what you decide to support. Well, every day you're confronted with choices to make. When you make conscious decisions to fund businesses that are morally and ethically aligned to your values, that's also activism. What do I eat? What should I buy? How should I get to work? What should I eat? What shall I wear? What shall I do today? What shall I read, watch, listen to? What should I eat? There are obviously some decisions that we make more than others. Decisions that can often hold more weight over others because they're decisions that we have to make day in, day out. One of those, for example, as I'm sure you've guessed it, is deciding what to eat 3 times a day. As you just heard before me, what we eat matters. The consequences of our food choices can often be unimaginable and pretty tricky to fathom when we can't physically see what goes into our meals. The full extent of this issue can often be so overwhelming that it seems intangible, almost abstract. And we're often left so bewildered by the vastness of the numbers that we regularly turn to more tangible issues instead as an opportunity for climate action. I say more tangible because these measurable consequences are often ones that we can see with our eyes, and not just with our imagination or numbers or statistics. We repeatedly put the blame on planes, on cars, on buses, on plastics, and air conditioners because we can see them. They seem more tangible because we own them and we use them daily. And we can quite literally see the exhaust fumes, hear the bellowing noises, and smell the thick smells that they generate. But we have to remember that these industries are funded by our choices and our willingness to accept them. Choosing a plant-based diet is just a great example of how small actions can have a huge impact, if not one of the very largest. The simple action of choosing what to eat or what not to eat is a form of passive climate activism. Of course, the resources that need to fuel these more tangible industries is still colossal. And the negative impact that they have on our climate is undeniable. So by choosing renewable energy suppliers, choosing to fly less, choosing public transport, choosing to recycle, choosing secondhand, choosing to avoid single-use plastics, choosing to turn off your air conditioning and your lights, choosing who to elect, or even choosing what you put on your plate. These are all conscious choices that we can make every day. And each and every one of these choices is a much-needed counterpunch in our fight against climate change. There are some choices that are understandably much more complicated than others. And it might not be as black and white as we first imagine. I don't know about you, but personally, I wouldn't want to cycle to work in Bangkok for some obvious reasons. Heat, air pollution, insanely dangerous traffic, just to name a few. EVs, electric vehicles, they are generally speaking unattainably expensive, unattainably affordable for most, and voting for a government representative who has more of a climate-centered approach to their policies, that can also be tricky to navigate depending on your country. But don't let that discourage you. All we can do is the very best that we can. And in that final minute, together, as individuals, our very best will be enough. Often when we're presented with information, one action seems less desirable over another, even though it could be much easier to adopt and have a greater impact. That's primarily to do with the public's perception and their attitude towards that choice. Most people's decisions are based on comfort, ease, accessibility, and generally speaking, social acceptance and hype. If decisions seem exclusive or restrictive, even unapproachable, then people are much less likely to do it. But we all have the power to persuade others by clearly and logically expressing our motivations and our reasons for that choice. Every social movement that has ever taken place in history has started the same way. It started with a thought, one single decision, often controversial. It starts with that superpower that we never knew we had, the power to be the first droplet that turns into a roaring ocean. If your choices are approachable to the public, then you'll start to encourage more people to make conscious decisions, indirectly. Your choices are now affecting others. Activists are essentially inadvertent educators. What this means is that the way you communicate your decisions to others can turn your already very powerful choices into an explosive social movement. You have the power to reach hundreds, if not thousands, through that small device in your hands or your pockets. Social media isn't just a resource for us to access information. It's also a tool for us to galvanize communities and to encourage everyone from all ages, genders, ethnicity, or beliefs to feel like they matter, to feel like they're not alone in their actions, and to feel like they can join other people's journeys and be inspired to continue their own. Approachable social movements have impact. They allow communities of people to come together and take part in collective passive activism. These passionate communities create excitement and they create hype. And they too want to promote the mission by galvanizing people to organize activities and events and projects. Because every day is an opportunity to be a climate activist. Every day we can fight for what we believe in. And with integrity and authenticity, others will hopefully be inspired to do the same. So, in our very last minute, in humanity's 11th hour, we have to unite. We have to be strong. And we have to use the most powerful tools at our disposal and to popularize our choices. Because when that choice becomes popular, it becomes a movement. When that movement becomes a passionate community, we're unstoppable. And we can change the world. So everything that you've done up until this point has led you here in some way to awaken your inner hero, your inner climate activist. So I urge you to take action today by making a choice to change just one decision that you know will make an impact. Just one. I hope that fire in your belly is burning, because the end credits aren't far off. It's up to all of us to start landing some punches and decide how our story ends. Thank you. just before you jump in. Does anybody have an action or a choice that they want to share with everybody else that they would like to start today?
Hi everyone, my name is Mpo. I'm from South Africa, and I think one of my biggest passions with regards to climate change action is my vegan page. It just brings me joy that showing someone that look, healthy food can actually taste yummy has inspired so many people to not necessarily be vegan, but to see the beauty of, having food that tastes good but is, healthy. And I think it's a good place to start when debunking myths and, exposing the kind of industry, capitalist society that we're living in. And yeah, thank you.
Do you feel like it's made an impact?
Definitely. I have so many like friends who come to me and like, I don't want to be full vegan. I just want to, have substitute meals, or, some of the posts that I share, because I follow a lot of influencers who kind of like do a lot of research about the meat industry, the dairy industry, and the levels of exploitation that are actually hidden in the face of the public. And by bringing those to light, I've had people come to me and say, actually, I don't want to have dairy anymore after seeing this, after learning this. And I think that's also a good starting point, because if people don't know, then they can't act. And social media is a great place in which we can do that.
Yes. Thank you for your answer.
Hi, thank you for sharing. So I'm going to cite a book that has really influenced me. So in Andreas Malm's How to Blow Up a Pipeline, he talks about regressive carbon taxes, how often the lower hanging fruits that are the plastic tax, the banning of like one-time use bottles are banned, whereas the heavier rotten fruits that are the big carbon emissions are left alone. So for example, I may be taxed on my plastic bag, but people can fly private jets. So to me, I think the best action we can take is the kind of posting as she does on social media. So I think that's really quite impactful. And I would also like to ask a question, because I think I was on the UN page and I noticed that some of the individual actions that they cited that have a huge impact include voting in elections, as well as investing, putting your money where your mouth is. So not just buying ethical products, but investing in ethical companies and funds. And I was wondering, since you didn't mention this impact, the investing thing, what are your thoughts on like green investing and finance? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, I
Thank you.
can't speak for the UN and what's on their page, but I think that voting with your money, that's huge impact. If you can endorse a product or a business just by paying for them to continue that's great. That's where you should start. Really, you should look at which companies you no longer want to endorse, and look at the ones that you can sort of endorse with that money instead, and then you're essentially helping them to grow. I do think that there is, as an individual, for individual power in Thailand, it's caveated because the government, it's difficult for you to elect here. As much as I can go into that. But for an individual power, yeah, voting with your money, amazing. Definitely somewhere you should start. Yes, please.
Yeah, so one of the practices that I have adopted is not to waste food. Like it is not even part of my moral system. It's just because I cannot. It's possible for me to not waste food. I will not waste food, and it's something that the serving that you can decide for yourself. So that is one of the things I have been practicing religiously, and I also kind of I point out to others as well sitting on the table but I do not make it about moral system because it's not really a rule that you can follow. It's something very basic, I believe. So that is that. I had a question. So I am kind of stuck right now in this debate about capitalism and like taking climate change as an individualistic approach to it. So, so for example, if we are not using a plastic straw, and it feels like we are making some impact, but I read it somewhere that around 50 million straws will cause the same impact. I mean, will cause the same damage as one private jet flight. So then it's really kind of discouraging to even inspire others to not do it. It's like the capitalist society wants us to believe that we are causing it and we are responsible to take actions, but it's really the people in power and money that are causing actual and huge damage to the planet. So I'm kind of stuck at this point.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Who put those people in power? Who put those people in power for the majority of the time? For the majority of the time, it's us. I know, I understand what you're saying. I was just making a point that, you know, as an individual, we can also change who's in power. We can elect certain people to make those big decisions. I think that, yeah, I mean, individual choices, they might seem, if to me today, I don't want it to sound like you do one thing and you don't do another. And if you're doing one thing, maybe it's, you know, got you off the hook. Almost, you're using that, you know, I don't have straw as an excuse. But when you do start looking at the world through changing these small individual choices, that opens up to so many more. Your mind sort of shifts into that sort of more conscious consumerism, where even just that one thing of you saying, no, I don't want a plastic straw, you're thinking about that straw's impact. So you're probably most likely going to go off your everyday life and make more conscious choices. So of course, like, I don't want it to sound like if you're just doing one thing, you're off the hook. No, it opens it up to a possibility, to many possibilities. Thank you very much for your question, by the way. Oh, yes, you're hiding behind this lady in white.
Hi, I'm Charlene from Singapore Nanyang Technological University. So I just wanted to say that, like, to label yourself as a climate activist can seem like a very daunting task. It might seem like a very big responsibility for a lot of people, and not everybody has the capacity, like, for choice to make sustainable choices, and not everybody has the purchasing power to choose maybe more sustainable brands. But I think that to contribute to fighting against climate change can be something as small as even conversing with your friends, especially if you're not super comfortable with sharing online. So even conversing with your friends about, like, starting conversations on small debates or whatever, it's already good enough, and it's something to start the conversation on climate change as something that is more positive, to inspire hope, rather than the current narrative that it's quite negative, that it's a death sentence, that we can't do a lot. And I think that's very defeating. But to be able to converse with people and to inspire people to hope more is something that I think is quite important. So with regards to that, do you think there are any, like, tangible actions we can take to, like, shift the narrative to something that's more hopeful? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Of course. There are so many different actions, so many different choices that you can make every single day that will have a huge impact. Like the lady said here, she doesn't waste her food. And you know what, that sounds small? It's not, it's huge. Food waste is massive. What you choose to wear, where you choose to get your clothes from, might seem like a small thing. It's not, it's massive. How you choose to get to work might seem more tangible, but still huge. There are small actions that you can take every single day that will just add up. And if we just look at that thinking, oh, it's just my choice, I don't matter, nothing that I do is going to change anything, then nothing's going to change. We need to make people inspired to make those changes on an individual level first, and then on a massive scale. Because like I said before, if that choice isn't popularized, no one's going to do it. If that choice, say for example, eating plant-based food, isn't popularized, no one's going to do it. For my organization, I try to popularize plant-based food. It might seem like a very small thing, but the impact is huge. If I can just get one person to think, oh, okay, maybe for breakfast I'll remove the bacon and eggs, that's a huge impact, a tangible impact that you can actually look at statistics for. So I don't think that you should think, oh, it's just me, it's just my choice. Collectively, everybody has to make those decisions. And I think that social media as well, like you were saying before, is a great tool to explain and show to others how those choices that you're making are effective and accessible. So then people will decide to think, oh, okay, maybe I can make that. That seems easy, that seems fun. So yeah, I think, thank you for your question. I appreciate it. It's very kind. Before anyone asks me any other questions, are there any other choices or decisions that you want to make today?
Yeah, so I've got a choice that I would make and also a question afterwards. That's good. But so yeah, snuck that in there. Gotcha. So yeah, definitely a choice I would make, and one that I've been a bit slack on, honestly, but I think I should get back into is having shorter showers, because I'm sure we all love to have a nice long shower, and you know, I work in hospitality to support myself at uni, so obviously, you know, I smell like burgers, yum. But you know, so you want a nice long big shower, but I found that when I'm in a rush to go somewhere and I really need to have a quick shower, you can actually do all the shampoo, conditioner, soap and all that quickly. And so just that conscious decision of like, obviously showers can be very therapeutic and relaxing, but also then it's like your water bill and like the impact you have. So having shorter showers, I guess, is a very practical way we can all make a difference. But speaking of water, smooth transition here to my question.
Nice.
What I wanted to ask was, you talk about sustainable clothing, which obviously, you know, like the clothing industry has a huge water waste content. And you suggested like thrift shopping, for example, but I found with thrift shopping as well that it's kind of become a bit popularized in the sustainability thing, but then it also kind of gentrifies it a bit because, you know, people with lots of money will go out and buy everything in the thrift store, and it makes clothes more expensive, and it's like that whole social aspect of it is removed as well. But then when you like try and buy like a sustainable pair of jeans, it's like $300, and it's like, yay, the environment, but like, girl, I ain't that rich. So what I was just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of if you've done any like research into the sustainable clothing industry. Does it look like it's going to get any cheaper? Is there significant investment in it? Because it seems to be a very like, you know, stuck between a brick and a hard place kind of thing.
Thank you very much. The affordability of certain products is obviously the biggest pain point, basically worldwide. But before I go into that, let me tell you an analogy that I had the other day, which I thought was quite interesting. It's all about sort of popularizing a choice and sort of consumer behavior. Because like you said, when something gets trendy, or usually the price hikes, but then there's more people who want to do it. There's more people who want to join. So in Germany, a couple of 100 years ago, the king at the time brought in potatoes, and he planted potatoes all over the country. And in the fields where the potatoes were, he positioned guards. Now, potatoes, very cheap, very, very cheap resource, and he wanted to feed the country cheaply. But he knew that he had to change the consumer behavior to then decide to eat those potatoes, eat something affordable and delicious and healthy. So he changed the consumer behavior by putting guards all the way around these fields. So when people walked past, they were like, oh, what's that? That looks interesting. maybe I'll try that. That looks great. Kind of a similar thing where it's that consumer behavior is you're prompting that consumer behavior for somebody to try something good. Now, obviously, that might have an adverse effect where the price hikes up. But then the more people that get involved, the more competitive that will be, and that price will level. It's the same standard economics. If you have plant-based food, for example, is very high at the moment because there are limited companies, relatively limited companies that are producing plant-based food. But you see that we're at a point now where lots of these plant-based companies are these big businesses who are getting on board, and they're putting like massive amounts of R&D into these businesses. And they have they're competing with each other. And as that sort of competition rises, the price falls. So a difficult one to answer your question. Specifically fashion, it's easy to make very cheap clothes. It's very easy. And you have a choice not to support that. Given your scenario and your situation, you do have that choice. Whether or not to support, I can't name names or brands or anything in here, but certain certain fast fashion brands that are quite popular, that's insanely damaging to the planet in terms of water, and not just water, but fresh water, ocean acidification. It's not just a byproduct. So you have the choice, and I understand that it might be more expensive. If you can afford to do it, try. But if you can't, then it's understandable. You have to choose your fights. Thanks. Yes.
So, two-parter. To help answer yours, I know we are from Australia, so I'm Carmen from the University of Sunshine Coast. By the way, I love the talk. I'm doing my PhD thesis literally on what you just talked about. So we'll talk later. But one of the decisions I've made in the last month is that from now on, I'm only buying clothing that is transparent, like I can see where it's come from, so it's ethical, or it's secondhand. And on that note, I found
your clothing's transparent?
No.
Sorry.
That's a bit worrying. Hope not. But you can see exactly what's going on behind the scenes and where it's coming from. But in that process, I found 3 or 4 really good carbon zero online thrift stores that are all secondhand, everything from business attire to casual clothing. So I will show you those links. And so that's what I've done.
Thank you.
That's my decision.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Sorry, just going back to you as well. There are certain companies who are using byproducts like plastics to create clothing. It's still expensive because of the supply and demand. But the more demand there is, then the cheaper it's going to be eventually. Yes, please, over there.
I've made the choice in the past, 8 years or so, to travel and do as much as I can. I've been to Cambodia and I've made wash stations. I went to Bolivia, made a pedestrian bridge, and I've been other places. And I think it's very important for us to question our motivations and what our actions are actually doing. And I've come to find that my motivation wasn't necessarily to be that white savior, but to just leave, and I wanted to travel more so than anything. But I've noticed in the groups that I've traveled with that they get disappointed, and they get disappointed because they didn't make that huge change. And it's if that was possible, if it was possible for a group of people to come somewhere and change everything, it would already been changed by the people there. So I think it's very important to see what you're doing, and who's benefiting from it as well, because those mission trips or whatever, you may be just feeding into the negative, a group. For example, like American missionary, whatever, they might not be hiring local engineers, they might not be hiring local workers, they might not getting materials locally, and are even teaching like the local people how to use the system. I'm a part of Engineers Without Borders, and that's like a lesson that they've learned the hard way, because they go back to like some water treatment thing that they made and realize, oh, we didn't teach anyone how to use it, you know? And not only did we not teach them how to use it, but we took away their water source too in the process. And I think there's also like, if you go to Africa and you see these places that you can take pictures with like cubs, and then you can hunt and all these things. I think just look and see who's benefiting from it. And I think one of the most important things is to question your motivation, because why do you want to go to a different country and help other people and not stay home and do it in your home place? And I noticed, like, for example, I went to Cambodia and we went to what we were told was an orphanage, and it was actually a daycare, and everyone was disappointed. And it's like, why are you disappointed? These kids have parents. Like, you know, so to really to question your motivation, which is hard, I know, because everyone wants to be that good person and stuff. But I've learned through my experiences that it's really not the people there that are really benefiting. And a lot of times the only reason it's happening is because you're giving that American the idea that they're the ones helping. You're giving and you're spreading that white savior complex. And I mean, it's a rock and a hard place too, because you also, like, we're at a place where we've already made the global South kind of tied their hands to the global North via loans and whatnot. And I think they're almost using that savior complex to do it in a different way, and how they develop and things like that. And I truly believe that we would actually learn more from developing countries and seeing how they do it. Like, why are we not going back to that? Going back to how they live. Yeah, I think just you know, question your motivation, see what your the effects of what you're doing, both locally, and definitely question, like, if you are going somewhere for a trip, for example, like I went to Bolivia and built a pedestrian bridge. Question, why is it not already happening there? What is that blockage? And a lot of times it's government, which isn't always the most economical, or not economical, but ethical. But yeah, I think that's kind of the hard one, because I still have that like huge desire to leave my country, to leave my hometown, even though there's so much already happening there that needs to happen. But yeah, just question your motivations.
Oh, I like it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the thought. I think that selflessness is all in us, but I think the sort of modern colonialization as well of that aspect is just sort of very conflicting. So a part of us really does want to help, but the other part of us can see that we're sort of imposing our values and beliefs, and that's very difficult. So what we do here, I mean, the Future is based in Thailand. We've been here for 2 years, 2.5 years. I get it. I mean, I understand it. I'm trying to tell people to eat more plant-based food, and there are some people who are culturally ingrained. It's culturally ingrained, and it's difficult to not just remove their values, but for me to say, oh, you should be doing this because of this reason, when they're not in a position. Totally understand. But a lot of the time, it's not. We're not just reaching those people. When it comes to your second point about the greenwashing aspect of going to plant some trees or taking ocean plastic out, sometimes these really can be greenwashing events that are being put on by local businesses that want to make some bucks, basically. So you do just have to do your research. You're right. There are so many other places. There are lots of foundations that you can contact that have pretty good connections within the local community, so you can be rest assured, I guess, that your money is being fed into the right direction. But yeah, research is key because it's opportunity. People do want to take advantage of people's goodwill. So I think that we have to make sure that they don't.
Max, if we may take a question from a delegate sitting at the back.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you.
Hi, I'm Rocky. I'm also here with Brigham Young University, Hawaii. I'm wondering a bit what you think about the middle. We've talked a lot about making individual choices to become more sustainable and also massive global choices, but I sometimes feel like the gray area between that is a little harder to navigate. I know back at home, a lot of times when I'm having these kinds of discussions with friends and family members, it can grow kind of hostile when people feel like they're being villainized for what they're doing when really when choices are being made that aren't sustainable. I believe that most people aren't making them because they hate the planet. It's because it's cheap or it's what's been done in their family for a long time. And it's difficult to be told that what you're doing is wrong. So I'm wondering your thoughts on how to navigate those kinds of conversations without them becoming hostile.
Yeah, well, I've been dealing with this for a good 10 years. Saying that I'm vegan around friends and family isn't something you want to go straight in on. I think that if you can logically, let's say, if you explain to somebody your opinion or your decision, no matter whether it could be even political, they're always going to take offense because that's their belief. That's what they've been doing. For plant-based food, you could have a member of family who would say, "Oh, Gran lived till she was 100. She ate beef." It's not the point. It's the fact that you're always going to get some type of clash, as you saw in the previous talk. You mentioned plant-based food. That's always going to happen. You mentioned any other choice, and if they've been doing a choice or a decision or something that opposes that, they will feel like that it's a personal attack on them. So being able to diffuse that situation by saying sort of quite logically, this is my reason for doing it. You can. I mean, one tactic that I heard that was used quite well recently was when asked why he was plant-based by his member of family, he said, "Well, you know what, I don't know. But for me, it helped my fitness. It helped the way that I looked at life. It helped my blood levels, my cholesterol. Like these are my statistics. I can't tell you the reasons. I'm not going to provide all of this data for you because I don't know. But if you can personally show how it's affected you, then that's your battle. But you know, if it's difficult, it is difficult. So just be very logical. One of the things that I do online, bit of a keyboard warrior sometimes, you have to embrace the haters because they're only getting annoyed at you because they're interested. They're only asking you this question because they kind of want to know why. So even though it might seem like an attack on you or your choice or your belief, don't let it seem that way. Just make it seem like they're just genuinely trying to ask you questions. So just be very level-headed and you'll win the fight.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm from Perth, University of Western Australia. So I had a question on if there is a matrix or a deciding sort of criteria that you can use to determine what's the list of priorities in terms of environmental issues to focus all of your finances and efforts onto, especially so you can like focus on an area and then based on what your analysis has proven, you can sort of encourage and support and influence other people to jump on as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at the sort of FAO pie chart, the emissions, that's probably a relatively good place to start because then you can sort of see which industries have caused or who are polluting the most. That's a great way to sort of break down which industries you don't want to endorse. So, for example, if you look if you look at animal agriculture in that, and then you include the agricultural field burning in that section as well, which is another 14%, that's essentially a quarter of the entire chart that the FAO has released. Other industries are like roads, concrete, energy as a whole, which is very vague. But I think that you need to, you look at that and you see, okay, well, there are parts of this pie chart that I can do personally. I can eat plant-based food. I can buy secondhand. I can sort out my food scraps. I can start a social media page to try and get that word out. I can have less showers. Like there are these different things that you can do. They will all add up. It's very difficult to put them in a context of which one's bigger than the other. But if you look at food, it does have a larger weight to it. So I would suggest that's where to start. But don't let me put you off doing that. Like, do everything and anything you possibly can. Because the thing that's going to make the most impact is what you do every day. So just to you, just your personal, as an individual. If you're looking at it as a, if you step back and look at it as a whole, there are certain things like plant-based food that might have more of an impact. But if you're already eating plant-based food as an individual, you're not, there's more that you can do. is what I'm saying. But yeah, I'm not sure if I answered that well, but thank you. If there's anything that you want to ask, if I haven't really...
I'm like, sort of, like, for example, if you were to go to a university and encourage a faculty to start up some sort of movement, but bear in mind that the people in that faculty, they're all connected to sort of quite high, like low poverty, like low education, low health resources. A lot of them will be impacted by the rising sea levels. How do you sort of find something that we can all agree is important and supports not only the environment, but also our families and our lives?
I see. Make it tangible to them.
Yeah.
Specifically. So make that option easy for them to do and show them the positives of that specifically. So, for example, if these lecturers were, if they were focusing on sort of a lower economic group of people, and that was their community, then you go in and you talk about, in a fun, inviting, accessible way, the benefits of what type of choices that they can do specifically. I can't give that option to them. I don't know what that is, because I'm not in their scenario. I'm not in that situation. But I think if you really want to make an impact, you just go to talk to people. Just find out what their pain points are, and then it will come quite naturally. If their pain point is affordability, then you know that, oh, okay, well, then that's off the table. There's certain things that are off the table. Not going to buy Tesla. But there are other things that you can do or that they can do that will benefit them. But your choices do matter. Thank you. Lady, their arm very high in the air.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Michelle. I'm from the Faculty of Sustainability, and I study political science also at Reichman University in Israel. I have like a few things that I would like you to address. I'm trying to combine them because I think they combine, so just go with me. I have to disagree with you, not fully, but mainly partly about the aspect of the change comes from us on a daily basis, because from what I've learned and what I know, eventually where the power is today, and it's very sad to say, and I wish it was with my ideology or my values, but it's where the money is. And today the money is with corporates and with policymakers and in the government. So if we've gathered here in Thailand when we came all like scattered from all over the world to discuss about change, so I would like to address like on a more national scale and not just me not drinking from Coca-Cola or me not eating meat on Mondays, but more how do I, Michal, and my friends from the delegation and everyone here go back home and bring the change in a national scale. And do I invest in new sustainability technologies that improve water waste in Israel? And that's where the money is now, so that's why the government should invest. And each government and her, her motives. Like, many governments choose different things. And eventually, it's in the money. Like, that's what I see. And yeah, so it's not, so when you talked about what an activist is, so I didn't see someone with war paint and going like, free whatever. I saw someone who chooses different and chooses to see the other person and chooses in the positive things that sustainability has to offer. And if it's food tech or impact investments or all these like new technologies for beehives, we have the colony collapse and everything. So I would love for you to address it, because at the end, I'm going home and my environment is very sustainable and we recycle and we don't eat meat. But at the end, there's a whole population in Israel that is not even aware because it doesn't have the access to this information. So how can I impact higher levels than me to, I think you got it. So,
I think you answered it yourself with access. Thanks for the question, by the way. Yeah, access and education. You want to show them, or these people, or the people in Israel who have no idea about these benefits, the positives of those benefits. You want to show them how it can be positive. So if you go home, you look at how, or which way, or what direction, or what avenue you can take to try and get them involved in what you're doing. So you look at their pain points, and if that's language, then you try to bring somebody else in to explain what that is. If it's affordability, you sort of list out all of these issues that might would benefit them, but benefiting is also key to accessibility. If they benefit monetary, if they actually get something out of it, then that's great. That's a great access point. Going back to sort of a choice on a government level and subsidies, totally agree with you. I don't think we're saying anything differently. I think that, well, right now, I think that FAO said $11 million every second is spent on subsidizing the oil and coal industry worldwide. That's huge. That's huge. And we look at that and we think, how am I going to change that? What am I going to do about that? But we all have the power to change who's in control and to change politically where that money goes to, where it distributes to. So I don't think that you should sort of be discouraged by the sort of vastness of the issue. You should really be encouraged by your own personal choices. And if you can show, like the person said over there, if you can show sort of a tangible change in that community that you're also working with, that will encourage you as well. And that will also encourage them to share it around. So it really is just a general message of good vibes is what I'm going for here. And I think these good vibes will just really improve our own situations. So, but government, yes. If you can vote for policymakers, if you have that ability to do that, that's great. I understand if you can't. There are many countries, even the one you're in now, that you can't. But don't let it discourage you. I hope that answers your question. It's a difficult one, really.